So, this is weird. Freemasons, you go to their message boards, their discussion groups right now. They're under no misunderstanding about what happened with Joe Biden and the Grand Master of the Most Worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge in South Carolina on Sunday, January 19th, when Joe Biden became a Freemason. They're not confused about this whatsoever. In fact, most of them, it seems to be, are very angry, albeit for different reasons and not really a lot of moral reasons, more just the technicality of the whole thing and some just historic arguments about the landmark supposedly by which a grandmaster can confer membership in a way which he conferred membership on Joe Biden. So they're kind of angry about who, what, when, where, and why. Okay. But they all agree that yes, Joe Biden is a Freemason now. But if you come over to the Catholic side, there seems to be some confusion with some people. They're saying that it wasn't actually Joe Biden becoming a member. It looks like something honorary thing, membership, and Joe Biden maybe didn't even agree to what was going on there. Let me read to you just some comments and some about what happened there from some Catholic publications. This one is from The Pillar, which is supposed to be a credible online rag. It says, for a start, it is not clear to what extent Biden accepted formally or informally membership into the lodge, or if it was merely presented to him as something that they did for and to him. Pictures of the event show the president shaking hands and embracing the head of the lodge, but not receiving any certificate or physical representation of membership. We're going to get into actually what you see in those pictures. That was actually a communication of some very high level secrets. It wasn't just a handshake. It wasn't some sort of embrace at all. And you don't usually receive a certificate right after you become a member. Sometimes that comes way later. And he says, well, that matters because the actual crime and canon law is not the status of becoming a member of a Masonic lodge, but the act of joining. I don't understand the distinction between the two. If you join, you're a member, and if you're a member, you join. There's really no distinction. That's kind of weird there. I never heard of that distinction. Here's one from a rag that calls itself Where is Peter? This writer says, even I fell for it briefly. I certainly didn't think he went through the rituals and ceremonies that are typically required to become a Freemason, but I thought that perhaps he'd attended an event at a lodge and they given him some sort of honorary membership, similar to the way a commencement speaker receives an honorary degree from a university. Freemasons have no such thing as honorary membership, by the way. That's not even a thing. But it wasn't even that. It may even have been done without his knowledge. According to several sources, the ceremony took place in the receiving line during the former president's visit to South Carolina that day. The report came from the lodge and does not in any way suggest Biden actually accepted the membership. It's fake news. And here's Kennedy Hall.
It seems pretty obvious they offered him at least an honorary Masonic membership. Did Joe Biden officially seek out membership? Did he go through the rituals and the initiation process? Doesn't seem like it. But did he show up to a ceremony where they gave him membership in an honorary fashion? Yeah, that did happen. It seems more like, when somebody has a lifetime of writing or something like that, and a university confers on them an honorary doctorate in whatever.
At first I was a little bit disappointed by the whole thing, right? Because Catholics have been blessed with two tremendous sources of information about Freemasonry from two people who either converted or reverted to the faith. That's John Salza and myself. John Salza was a Freemason and then he reverted to the faith. He wrote two wonderful books on the subject and he spoke extensively on the subject. He's a wonderful source. He's accessible. Just email him. And then there's me. There's never been a Freemason who converted to Catholicism, who was more accomplished, had done more in Freemasonry, was an expert in Freemasonry from the Freemasons' perspective, had written massive amounts, Grand Lodge appointments, a fellow of Masonic Research Society. Just no one has. There's never been a Freemason like me, as accomplished as me, who's come over to Freemasonry, converted, and started doing the work of evangelizing Catholics who call themselves Freemasons, or Freemasons who call themselves Catholic. My book, again, The Catholic Catechism on Freemasonry, is the premier work on the subject, explaining everything about what Freemasons believe, why it contradicts with what the church believes, and it goes through every papal, encyclical, every document from the church about Freemasonry, and explains it in its historical context. Even I have a compendium of it for people who want something shorter to read. I have a master class on the subject that's free at St. Dominic's Media. And I have a whole resource page of just massive amounts of information about the subject. And I'm available by email. And I usually do a really good job responding to emails. If I don't respond back in a week, just email me back. So I was a little disappointed that Freemasons understand what happened, but Catholics are confused about it, and maybe confused because they didn't use some of the resources that they have available with them. So, but then I realized that, okay, I kind of get it. I think a lot of people assume they understand Freemasonry because maybe they read a book, oftentimes a really bad book like Infiltration by Taylor Marshall, or The War Against the Antichrist by George Dillon. Just really bad books. But they read these books and they thought, oh, maybe I understand. Maybe read something on Wikipedia. I think Freemasonry is one of those things that's just in a culture, just in the milieu. It's just something that people they think they know, sort of like Catholicism. A lot of Protestants think they understand what Catholicism is. We pray to Mary. We worship Mary and the Pope and things like that, right? And I think it's like that. So I understood that. So it's okay, all right. Maybe these mistakes are kind of innocent. They were avoidable but innocent. Also, I realized that Freemasonry is a secret society. It has secrets. It's normal that people would not understand or maybe even heard of the process by which Joe Biden became a Master Mason. So I'm going to go through that process, explain what it is, explain to you what secrets Joe Biden received, what secrets he did not receive in that process. But first, let me do a little bit of housekeeping, okay? Because I saw out there were some tweets out there. This one here from Kennedy Hall saying that Joe Biden had always been a Freemason. Okay. And this one here from Father Dave Nix saying, using the word Freemasonic. He's not really, I don't think, talking about the whole Joe Biden thing. But I just want to tackle both of these things together. Number one, you cannot be a Freemason without being initiated into Freemasonry. Freemasonry is an organization, it's not an ideology. So, and you cannot become a Freemason more than once. You cannot take the first degree, the second degree, third degree more than one time. It's kind of like baptism, just once, and that's enough. So when people say that Joe Biden had always been a Freemason, that's not true. Right. He was not a Freemason until January 19th, 2025, when he was made by Grand Master Victor a Mason on sight. So Freemasonry is not an ideology, it's an organization. Now, Freemasonry doesn't embody ideologies such as naturalism, indifferentism, relativism, secularism, but it's not an ideology itself, it's an organization. And the only way to belong or become a member of this organization is going through some sort of initiation process. Also, because Freemasonry is an organization, not an ideology, we cannot speak of it in like adjectives, right? Nor can we say, oh, this person is a Freemason, or without any proof that they actually joined. Now, we can say that about communists or liberals, or he's a communist, he's a liberal because of why he's acting. Freemason organization, not an ideology, so we can't do that. Nor can we assign terms, make up terms such as Freemasonic in a way that's an adjective to describe an action, because, again, it's an organization, not an ideology. Nor can you make up words about Freemasonry, saying, oh, you can take the word Freemason and the word Masonic, join them together, say Freemasonic. That sounds like a rock band. It's not even a word. So we have to speak in ways. If we want to truly evangelize Freemasons, we have to speak in ways that they understand. Imagine if you're a Catholic and someone comes up to you and they take the word sacrament and the word baptism and they say sacrobat and try to explain to you why sacrobat is wrong. Now, as a Catholic, you're listening to them and you're being merciful. You're getting the benefit of the doubt, I guess. And you're not going to just outright laugh in their face. Right, but on the inside, you just have a huge kerfuffle, right? You're just busting up on the inside, like what the hell is a sacrobat? That's the same thing that happens when Freemasons see Christians using the word Freemasonic. It is a running joke. They don't know what it is, but they think it's funny. So always be aware of that. Speak in ways, evangelize in ways that people can understand what you're saying, understand their lexicon. Even if it's Muslims, even if it's Protestants, Jehovah's Witness, understand their lexicon and speak to them in a way that they might understand and relate. Very simple. Now let's get into what Joe Biden, the secrets that he learned and the secrets that he didn't learn. Hey, David O'Gray here. If you like the truth and humor content, why don't you hit that like button? Hit that sub button. Oh, and hit that share button and share it with as many people as humanly possible. And join us. Join our channel here at YouTube and hop over to saintdominicsmedia.com. Check out my content there, my ministry. And if you like what we're doing there, become a member. Make a donation. Buy a book. Buy a t-shirt. Because whatever you spend there, 50% of it goes to invest in prisoners in federal state prisons in the United States. There's like 1,700 of them. So what we're doing, we're sending books to prison chapel libraries so that prisoners can read them, read these books and grow in their faith, so that again they can learn to live righteousness inside and then outside of prison. And this may be your way to do the one thing that Jesus asked you to do with people in prison, to visit them. So we're visiting them with the faith to enrich their faith so that they can grow in holiness and righteousness inside and outside of prison. Thank you. So in addition to my books, which you can buy over at St. Dominic's Media or anywhere that you get your books online, you can also just hop over to St. Dominic's Media, check out an essay I wrote on the subject about Joe Biden becoming a Freemason. So let's get into what secrets that Joe Biden learned, what he didn't learn. So there's two ways which a person become a Freemason. There's really two processes. And I break it down really as simple as that. There's a lot of nuance, a lot of differences between jurisdictions. I can get into a lot of details here. I won't, because it's really not necessary. I'll just explain the two processes by which a person can become a Freemason. The first way is the conferral of degrees upon you and proving proficiency in each degree. What is proving proficiency? Well, in Freemasonry, this goes back to the Stone Guild days when it was just your Freestone Masons back in the 700s, 600s. When you had these lodges, and lodges were very Catholic, they had priests assigned to them, deacons, they celebrated saints, very Catholic, then it became very Anglican, and then very Protestant. And, the history you can read about in my books. But so the idea of proving proficiency, if you want to be a stonemason, where you show up to a guild or you show up to a master's house and you apply to be an apprentice. Later on in England and Scotland, there were rules and systems in place to really guide this process more closely. But that's the basic idea. Now, to advance from being just an apprentice to being a craftsman, you had to prove that you're proficient as an apprentice, that you knew how to do the work of an apprentice. Then you would advance to craftsman, which is very important. If you're a fellow craftsman, that means you were able to travel around Europe and you were able to find work and build. And some of the greatest cathedrals and churches and monasteries, you can find work because you were a licensed craftsman. Okay, that's what proving proficiency means. So Freemasonry, modern Freemasonry, brings that over into a system and creates this Grand Law system and this ritual system in 1716, 1717. And so it became more of a philosophical idea. So now you receive the first degree, and then to get advanced to the second degree, you have to prove you're proficient in the first. Now, what does that look like? Well, you're assigned an instructor, you learn a lot of information, and that's different from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Sometimes a lot, sometimes a little, sometimes it's coded, sometimes it's uncoded, whatever. But you present yourself back to the lodge after maybe a month, and you stand at the altar and you're quizzed on particular questions, and also certain foot positions, hand positions, and everything. And then you're asked to leave the lodge, you're taken out the lodge, and then the members in there who heard your proficiency test or whatever, they vote. And they can vote to accept your proficiency or not. All right, if you're accepted, well, you move to the next degree. If you're not, well, you come back again and you're quizzed again. I've seen both when I was a Freemason. We've told people to come back next month, and we immediately advance people to the next degree. I've seen it both ways. But that is the regular traditional way by which a person becomes a Freemason, the route of proficiency. And again, that looks different. Sometimes it's maybe you're going to get all the degrees at one time. Maybe you're not going to be escorted around a lodge. You're not going to be actually part of the degree. Maybe you'll just see it exemplified on the stage. And then you go back to your home lodge where you were became a member, and they instruct you from there. You have some sort of lodge education officer assigned to you, but it's still the same idea that you receive a degree and then you prove proficient in that degree. Now here's the other way. That's the way that Joe Biden became a Freemason. It's called making a Mason on site. This is only a prerogative of the Grand Master. Now this is very arguable. When I was a Freemason, I was writing about this, and again, if you drop down in the description box and read the article, I have a link to an essay that I wrote when I was a Freemason about this. That there's a claim started with Albert Mackey that it was an ancient landmark, I think it was number 6 or number 8, that a Grandmaster has the prerogative to make a Mason on site, which means that a person become a Freemason without proficiency. By the Grandmaster's power, he can just make a person a Master Mason, take them through all degrees at one time. Now, again, my argument when I was a Freemason that this landmark was neither ancient nor was it a landmark. It was just completely made up. However, Grandmasters today, as we see in South Carolina with Grandmaster Victor, people still exercise it. And this is one of the issues that Freemasons are having with this right now. It's a technical argument. There's a lot of technical details that people are arguing about right now about what happened here. But that's the second way. Now, it's sort of like think of, as a Catholic, think about the sacraments of holy orders. Now, the sacrament of holy orders today is very elaborate. There's candidates laying with their face on the ground. There's scriptures. There's music. There's, it's a whole bells and whistles, pomp and circumstance, bells and smoke, right? It's a whole thing. But there are only 2 required things for the sacraments of holy orders to be celebrated. That is, number 1, the imposition of laying on hands. This goes back to the book of Acts, that a bishop who is a successor of the apostles has to lay hands on the candidate for ordination into the priesthood. The second thing are the prayers of consecration, which actually consecrates the man into the order of Melchizedek. So those are 2 things. Imposition of laying on hands and prayers of consecration, which configures a person. The man gives him an indelible mark on the soul, configures him into as being a participant in the high priesthood of Jesus Christ. That's it. Now, aside from that, it can be very elaborate. I've seen one. It's crazy. It's beautiful, really. But the same way with the Grandmaster has to determine what is the essential elements to make a Master Mason. Now, when I was a district deputy, which means which is the second highest appointed office in Grand Lodge, where you're basically the deputy, you're the face representative of Grand Master in one of the districts of the jurisdiction of the Grand Lodge. The Grand Master had come down to our district in Dayton, Ohio, and there were a bunch of men who were going to be made Masons on site. Usually a number of political figures, and these are typically the type of people who become Master Masons on site. They're people who don't really have the time or sometimes even ability to prove proficiency. So Joe Biden, even though he wasn't really qualified to be a Freemason because he's an old man in dotage, he's an imbecile, he really can't comprehend the teachings of Freemasonry, apply them to his life. Again, he's in dotage, and if you're an old man in dotage, you're not supposed to become a Freemason. It's forbidden. But nevertheless, in a way, he is a type of candidate because he doesn't have time and to show up to a lodge every, go to these study sessions, once a week, show up at a lodge for the next 3 months to prove proficient and memorize a lot of information. So he's a type of candidate. He's a political figure. He's notable, like an actor, celebrity or something like that. So he's a type of person you typically see, like a Mike Tyson, a Don King, the type of people who become Master Masons on site. Right. However, it should be noted that the Grand Master, it is his prerogative to determine what's the bare minimum here. What are essential elements to make this person a Master Mason? So again, when I was a district deputy, the bare minimums that the Grand Master communicated to us to convey to the candidates was they had to be obligated in each degree. They had to know each handshake and be given a word associated, the secret word associated with the handshake. So really just three things: obligation, handshake, and word. I don't even think we taught them the footwork, how your feet should be. Maybe we did. But I sort of like the signs and the symbols. So obligation, signs, and symbols. That's it. They were not given lectures of each degree. They were asked to prove proficient, come back to the lodge and prove proficient. Again, because when you're made a Mason on site, that's the one distinction, the difference between the traditional processes. So Grandmaster Victor in this case, let's go over the pictures and we can sort of see what Grandmaster Victor thought was really the bare minimums of making Joe Biden a Master Mason on site. So let's take a look at this first picture here. And what you see here, the first thing I want to point out is that the way that we know that this was something official taking place here, wasn't some sort of, again, Freemasons don't have an honorary membership. And if Grandmaster was just going to give some sort of certificate to somebody for their work in the community, he would not show up in his regalia. Okay. But that's how we know that this is something different that's taking place here, because Grandmaster Victor is in his full regalia as a Grandmaster, which includes his cuffs and his hat. Now, when Grandmaster Victor or any Grandmaster just goes to their regular lodge meeting at home, they don't show up in their Masonic regalia. The only time a Grandmaster is in his Masonic regalia with cuffs and hat and chain is when he's doing the work of a Grandmaster. He's actually at work. Think of a priest. When a priest goes to celebrate a mass or a confession, there is a way that he dresses because he's doing the work of a priest or a football player or a garbage man. There are uniforms people wear when they're doing the work of their job. This is the how Grandmaster looks when he's doing the work of a Grandmaster. Okay. And only when he's doing the work of a Grandmaster does he dress like this. So that's the first thing I'm going to notice, that this is more than some sort of handshake and warm embrace, as these Catholic commentators are saying. Now, in the picture here, notice how Grandmaster Victor, he's holding Joe Biden by the left arm and he's doing something else with his right arm. So it's right hand to right hand. Now, this is very important because a lot of people will say, they'll show these pictures of people doing something weird with their hands, handshake. Think of a Nancy Pelosi shaking Pope Francis' hand. People were saying, oh, this Nancy Pelosi is doing something Freemasonic. Freemasonic, oh my gosh. That's a Freemasonic handshake. No. It's possible Nancy Pelosi could be a Freemason. There's many women Freemasons. But the reason why you notice never a Masonic handshake, the reason why you never see a Masonic handshake, because the Masonic handshake has to be concealed. Never revealed, always concealed. It has to be concealed, or you can be suspended or expelled, because if it's not concealed, you're revealing the secrets of Freemasonry. So here, that's what you see. You see a concealed handshake. So one of the bare essentials, I think, the Grand Master's teaching Joe is the grip of each degree. The first degree, second degree, third degree. He's just teaching them there. Saying, okay, this is the first, this is the second, this is the third. Okay. Again, one of the bare essentials that a Grand Master wants to teach in the Making Mason on Sight process. Where it takes place doesn't really matter either. I think one of these writers, Where's Peter, said, "Oh, this took place in some sort of line." Perhaps, but I worked under a Grand Master who's making Masons on site in airports, in bathrooms. It doesn't matter. A Grand Master has a power and authority to convene a lodge, an occasional lodge, wherever he wants to, and do whatever he wants to in that occasional lodge. So if he wants to call an occasional lodge on this stage here, he has the power to do that and to make a Mason on site. That's his prerogative, he would argue. So that's important. Communicating each sign. Now, in this other picture here, this is the what you call the 5-alarm fire. This is what is it's so clear that Joe Biden just became a Master Mason in this picture right here. Is every Freemason who looks at this knows that Joe Biden is their brother now. So what do we have here? Again, we have Grandmaster Victor in his regalia, meaning he's doing the work of a Grandmaster. We see a picture here of, looks like he's teaching him a handshake. Now in this last picture, I think people call this a warm embrace. Maybe people think this is how just black people shake hands, just a warm embrace. Hey, brother. It's not that. What's going on here, when a person is raised to the sublime degree of Master Mason, the very first thing that they're taught is the most secret handshake or sign or token of a Master Mason. That is what's called the 5 points of fellowship. So you don't see two parts here. I don't know if it came before or came later, but let me tell you what the 5 points of fellowship are that Joe Biden learned here. The 5 points of fellowship of a Master Mason are, and I won't go into the meanings. I think I'd probably forget them, so I'm not going to stumble over the meaning of each one. But it's foot to foot, so they're going to touch right foot to right foot. Okay, so foot to foot, and then they're going to touch knee to knee, so they're going to touch knee to knee. Okay, and then after they touch knee to knee, the next thing is hand to back. That's the 3rd point of fellowship. The 4th point of fellowship is chest to chest. And then the 5th point of fellowship is cheek to cheek. So it's foot to foot, knee to knee, breast to breast, hand to back, cheek to cheek. That's probably the wrong order, but those are the 5. Foot to foot, knee to knee, breast to breast, hand to back, cheek to cheek. And then under here, that's what's being, again, concealed, never revealed. They're going to exchange the grip of a Master Mason. And not just the grip of Master Mason to get into the lodge. They're going to exchange the grip by which Hiram Abiff was raised from the dead. Right? The true grip of a Master Mason. So that's what they're exchanging in there. And also it could be just the 3rd degree grip as well. There may be variations. Why it's important to know each grip of a Master Mason, inter-apprentice, fellow craft is because if a Joe ever shows up to a lodge meeting, he has to know how to get in. So, and outside the lodge, there's going to be a man with a sword, check in to make sure this person is actually a Freemason. And one thing Joe, he's going to have to show his membership card, but also he's going to have to show how to get into the lodge. If it's in the 1st degree, maybe the Tyler will tell him. They're meeting in the 1st degree. And then Joe will know what handshake to give him and what word to give to get into the lodge. If he gives the right handshake and the right word for that degree, he'll let him in. Right? And then Joe has to go to the altar. He has to give the sign. He'll look at the Bible, see what scripture the Bible is set on. And then he'll do the sign for that degree at the altar. and everyone looking at him will know that, okay, he's supposed to be here. All right, he knew how to get in, and he knew what to do when he got to the altar. Okay, we don't have to do anything to him. All right, so that's why these are really just the bare essentials to make a Master Mason on site. So that's what went on here. And again, I just really encourage people who want to speak about Freemasonry that if you don't know, you don't know. You don't have to assume. You can always reach out to someone like myself or John Salza, or you could pick up our books. Again, mine are available anywhere you buy your Catholic books online. Again, I have a master class, 13 lessons on the subject for free at stdominicsmedia.com. So you don't have to be ignorant about this and lose credibility, be a little bit embarrassed, and have to make apologies and retract your articles because you were wrong. Just try to get it right the first time. You have resources available. If you call yourself a researcher, you should be doing that. You should be using, don't be in too big of a hurry to get a story out. Rather, get the story right. And I think Catholics, I think you have the resources available to get that right when you're talking about the subject of Freemasonry. You have some tremendous resources. So let's take advantage of them. But yeah, Joe Biden did become a Freemason. The process that he went through was making a Mason on site. He is a full member. He's a Master Mason. He is excommunicated now because of that, because becoming a Freemason is a grave sin, and all grave sin, excommunication from the lodge. You're not in communion with Christ and his church anymore. You cannot receive Holy Communion. The only sacrament that's available to you is the sacrament of penance and reconciliation. Now, the one saving grace that Joe did have, because he went through this type of process, is that he did not have to say the obligations, which is one of the worst parts of the whole process, the most demonic, the most satanic. Pope Clement XII in 1738, he said Freemasonry is an error and a danger and a vice for 5 reasons. First, he said that Freemasons have practice naturalism, which means that it's not through Christ in his grace by which a person becomes a better man, that he becomes holy. Now, Freemasons are teaching us by a person's own human effort by which they make themselves a better man. That they apply these working tools, the hammer, the gavel, the compass to their life, and they do this self-improvement. Right? That's naturalism. You're just trying to make yourself a better person without God and his grace. The second reason Pope Clement XII said is that Freemasons have their own moral law. Right? So there's the moral law of the Freemasons, and there's the moral law of Christ and his church. And they're at odds. For example, the moral law of Freemasons says that if a worshipful master summons you to a lodge, or a grand master, like Victor here, summons you to the Grand Lodge, then you must come. And if you disobey, you can be suspended or expelled. But what if that summons is on a holy day of obligation and you have to make a choice? Well, as a Catholic, you have to go to Mass. You have to worship at the Holy Liturgy. But you have this summons over here. So there's a choice. If you don't attend to worship, well, you're going to you committed a sin. And you have to attend to sacrament, penance, and reconciliation. Over here, you'll be suspended or expelled. So that's just one example, but these moral laws of these two are at odds. I'll skip over the third reason for now. The fourth reason, that Freemasonry is error, danger, or vice. And the fifth reason has to do with the political climate at that time. Freemasonry was looked at as an English export. And here they are in places like France and like Germany, and these guys are meeting in secret. They're calling themselves Freemasons, but they're not building anything. What's going on? In the climate at the time, they just thought revolutions were coming. These people were planning a revolution. And, well, sure enough, they were. Because in 1848, everything came to a head. England was successful in exporting the idea of parliament rule by the people. And we had a lot of revolutions in 1848 that tried to topple the monarchies throughout Europe. All right, so they were right about that. And Clement was right. That these Freemasons are meeting in secret. Right? And they're discussing things, And the fifth reason is that, well, because of the fourth reason, that is causing public tension. The people are not at peace. Freemasonry is becoming a disturbance. Now let's go to the third reason. The third reason, Pope Clement XII said, well, Freemasonry obligates their members on a host of grievous punishments. They obligate their members on a host of grievous punishments, which is the third reason of Freemasonry is error and danger of vice. Joe Biden actually avoided that one because he didn't take the obligation. And the obligations are gruesome and they are demonic because what the Freemason does, they say that it's the Masonic death penalty. The Masonic death penalty, a Freemason recites every time he takes an obligation. Because he says, I promise if I reveal the secrets of a Freemason, then this type of death penalty shall happen to me. And it's always gruesome. Things like having your tongue taken out, your heart plucked out, your bowels severed in twine and thrown to the four winds of heaven, and just these weird things, just crazy stuff. Okay, gruesome. But the worst part is that after they promise to receive the death penalty for revealing the secrets of Freemasonry, they say, so help me God and keep me steadfast. Now, Pope Clement, looking at this, because he had a lot of exposés that are around at this time. And in fact, in the back of my book, The Catholic Catechism on Freemasonry, you can read one of those exposés that Pope Clement would have been able to read and see what Freemasons were learning. But Pope Clement was like, what God is that? You just swore this gruesome punishment, this death penalty upon yourself. You swore an oath to receive it. To what God was that? It wasn't Jesus Christ, because we know he is the way, the life, and the truth. And that he came to give us life and life abundant. So he's not for death, he's for life. So who is this God that you said, so help me God to keep me steadfast, to receive, that you do not receive this death penalty for revealing the secrets of a Master Mason? So that was really a clear line in the sand, that Freemasons have a different God, their grand architect of the universe, of their universal religion, than Christ and his church. So, but that part Joe Biden actually avoided. And typically in making Mason on site process, typically all Masons who made it on site avoid that obligation. So that was the making the Mason on site process. That's what Joe Biden learned. Those are secrets he learned and the secrets that he didn't learn. And that's the set.